So we're going to get started. This is the third and final breakout session. And yeah, my name is Tara Bennett, and I'm going to talk to you guys about college essay and writing. Just in general, 10th grade families and students, raise your hand kind of just for, okay, and then 12th or 11th grade family and students. Okay, so most, great. So our plan for this particular session, we'll talk a little bit just about getting started in general, introductory stuff. We'll get deeper into the Common App, because that is the most common app that you will write. And then we'll talk about some tips and some steps and wrap up with some questions. Like I said, my name is Tara Bennett, and I run the Washburn Writing Center. This is my 6th year doing it. And I spend a lot of time in the fall working with students on college application essays. That just seems to be something that students have a need for and like to work with me on, so that's what we do. But also help you with your English paper if you need it. We'll do that too. And we work on anything from brainstorming, drafting stages, editing stages, to just proofreading. There are some students who will just pop up and be like, hey, I want to turn this in tomorrow. Can you give a final read-through? And that's what they're looking for, and that's fine. So, when we're thinking about the personal essay, when we're thinking about that Common App application, I am less interested in the things that you do and the things that you are, and more interested in who you be, which is those two things combined in some ways. So it's thinking about those pieces of yourself that make up your core being. This really kind of, if you had the most, like you needed to share the most important piece about what makes you up as a human being, that's who you be, and that's what you share. So it's not about the things that you do. It's not about, oh, I'm a problem solver, I'm a hard worker. It's those two things combined that make you who you be. And when I'm reading these essays, I'm looking for 3 things right away when I read them. I am looking for a visceral reaction. I want to feel something in my body, whether that be a smile, a laugh, a tear, or just some sort of warm, tingly sensation. I want to feel it. I should have a physical reaction. Those are the really excellent essays, are the ones that I have that physical reaction to. I am not looking for a list. I'm not looking for your list of accomplishments. I'm not looking for a list of your activities or the clubs that you have been a part of. I want to read about how those things that you do shape that piece of yourself, who you be. I also don't want to read at the end of the essay that this is why I want to be an accountant, and this is why I want to be a doctor. That's not a good ending. That's not what you want to wrap it up with. So that's not what I want to get to either. So it's not a list of those things that you are, or those things that you do. And I need to look for your authentic voice. I want to hear your voice come through. So that varies from student to student, clearly. And it needs to be consistent from beginning to end, that authentic voice. So these are the big 3 that I'm looking for. Visceral, it's not a list, and it's authentic. There are 2 main types of essays when we're thinking about applying for college. There's the personal essay and there's the supplemental essays. 98% of you will write the Common App essay because you will apply for, and I've used a different statistic every session, but I think 98% is pretty close. 98% of you will use the Common App to apply for schools, because most colleges and universities that have essay requirements use the Common App. There are a few schools that you may apply to just specifically through the school, and they will have a school-specific essay. So for example, I know Augsburg has their own application process. I think even St. Thomas might, as I'm looking back there, and they have a specific essay that then you could write just to the school. Oftentimes they just copy and paste what the Common App prompts are. So that's a thing as well. These essays, the personal essays, those are usually longer, about 500 words. Our Common App essay requirements are 250 to 650 words. The school-specific essays do vary in length though, so that's why I wrote about 500 words. There are also supplemental essays. And the number and type of essays varies based on the school that you are applying to. And they're anywhere from 140 characters, which is about the length of a tweet, I believe. And that is specific because schools think it's fun for you to write a tweet. Or to 650 words. And that is also specific because I'm guessing more than one of you will apply to Madison, and theirs is 650 words. So those two things are kind of important there. So those are the two main types of essays, and we'll get deeper into them right now. So the common application essay, we can think about it in these four ways: prompts, input, structure, and format. These are the tips for it. There are 7 prompts that you will be given for the Common App. They don't change very often or regularly. There was a new one introduced last school year, and prior to that it hadn't changed for the 5 years before that, and just one of them changed. So if you looked up, Googled Common App essay prompts, they are most likely going to be the same for our sophomore parents and students, and definitely for our 11th graders. They have not changed. The prompts are important, but you don't need to respond directly to the prompt. They simply give the essay a little bit of direction, but they don't drive the essay. So one of the essay prompts is about a period of time that sparked a moment of realization. If you don't use the word realization or sparked in that essay, you're totally fine. If you just allude to something new that you've learned, great, okay? So it just kind of sends your essay on a direction, it doesn't drive it. When we're thinking about input and how we're writing the essay, I urge all students to think very carefully about their organization and how they organize things and how they will keep track of all of their essays. Because you will go through the drafting process. You may write this essay 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 times. So are you just going to delete all of your work, or are you going to draft on a Google document and then have another draft right below it? You need to set up some sort of organizational system. So that's basically what it is. And then you will copy and paste it and put it into the Common Application. Not only do you need your organization for your Common App essay, but you also need to keep track of all your supplementals as well. Because for each school, you will have different supplementals. So you may end up writing, gosh, if you apply to 7 highly selective liberal arts schools, you could apply to, or you could end up writing 21 essays, plus the personal. So that's the first time I've done the math. Anyway, structure, the only structural rule that you get in writing these essays is the word count. Sometimes it's just the ceiling, so you have up to 500 words. Sometimes it's the floor and the ceiling, so you have 250 to 650 words. But there are no other rules provided. Paragraph length, capitalization, MLA style, any of that. That's all very vague and open-ended. The only rule you get is word count, and that's the same for supplementals and the Common App. And then format. There's no rules about formatting it either, so you can be very creative with this, or you can be pretty standard. So the standard length is, if you have like a 650 word essay, think about it in terms of 4 paragraphs, about 5 to 7 sentences in length. So it'll end up being about that long. But you can write paragraphs with 1 word in them, if that's what you choose to do, right? Like, you can be creative with your format, and we'll talk a little bit about that when we get to being unique. Supplemental essays. Many colleges, universities require students to write supplemental essays. These essays can be very long or very short. They're more common to be 250 words in length, 200 to 400 words in length. Which sounds nice, but 250 words is probably the worst number because it's a really long paragraph or two really, really short paragraphs, so it can be tricky. So it's important that you know they exist and then giving yourself time to go ahead and write them. In the Common App, when you select, oh, I'm going to apply to the University of Chicago, Macalester, St. Thomas, so on and so forth, it's going to they're going to populate in your Common App, and then the current supplemental essays will show up and you will know what you need to write. They are out there right now. There's a website that curates them and it's linked to my Writing Center website. So they are out there, but I can't guarantee that they're 100% accurate because those will change a little bit more. Highly selective liberal arts schools will ask you to write a lot of them. Madison, Michigan, and other Michigan also require you to write them. And those are the 650 word ones. Some of the examples are, why do you want to go here? So that could be, Madison's is why Madison? Why do you want to go to Madison? But also like Boston College has that, or Boston University, one of those two do. And they oftentimes will say a little bit about the school and then they ask you to respond back to it. Another common supplemental essay is identify an issue affecting your generation and what you would do to impact it. So that's another common type theme, or one that's a little bit more creative or fun and clever. Write a tweet, write a letter to your roommate, write what's your most impactful activity that you've done in high school, things like that. So there's ones that allow you to have a little bit more fun. With all of these, the most important thing you can do with a supplemental essay is to be specific. I am not going to write about climate change because that is very vague and very big. I am going to write about microplastics because that is much smaller and a specific issue, right? So that's a difference here. When I'm writing about the why, you are going to talk about what major you're interested in or what course of study, what classes excite you, what type of knowledge gets you going, right? So that's what you're going to write about here. And in the funny ones, or the ones that allow you to show a little bit more personality, that allows you to expand on something maybe you've already written, and you should have some fun with it. That's what they're expecting. So, all of you have been told essay writing steps, writing process, right? And this is not new. You brainstorm, you draft, you edit, you proofread, you create a final draft. This is not rocket science here. With this particular process, it is so important that you use all 4 of these steps in however much time it's going to take you to get through all 4 of them. So for some students, this is 3 days. For some students, it's I gotta start this spring and work on it all summer with the brainstorming and the drafting, and then the editing and the proofreading is gonna be September and October, if you're going for that November 1 deadline. So it changes for every student. It is important for you as a student to have some realization and know what your process is and to really do some reflection on that and give yourself the time that you need to do that. Start off with brainstorming. You want to think about those 2 things, the story, that's stuff you do, and the pieces of your character, those traits, right? So you want those 2 things to be thought about, not just, I'm going to tell this story about how I went to the Boundary Waters and portaged a canoe, but you're also going to think about, I want to talk about problem solving and being able to be a good listener and leadership or something like that. You want to give yourself time for drafting, and you also want to give yourself time to throw something away and start fresh, okay? So that's important, major rewrites. And do go into it knowing I only have 650 words. It is easier to go from 680 to 650 than from going from 1,000 to 650. So if we have to go from 1,000 to 650, I'm just erasing things for you if we're working together. And you might not agree with what I do. So, all right. But it's always good advice. Okay, so editing. You do want to share it with another person. It is important to share with a parent, a sibling, somebody who you trust I put a trusted friend. I do think age matters on this one. So sharing with somebody who's a little bit older might be helpful. And you want to read for content, word choice, format. Word choice is really important. If you can't pronounce the word, if this isn't a word that you regularly use in your daily life, maybe you don't want to use it. When I think about word choice, I think about what words, how do you speak at a Socratic seminar in English class? Like when you're discussing a book in an academic setting or a topic in an academic setting, you want to use that type of language. You don't necessarily want to be super formal and academic though. And then it is important that there are no glaring grammatical or mechanical issues with the text. But again, keeping in mind that there are no rules except for word count. So MLA isn't driving our capitalization rules or things like that. But there are some basic English language rules we want to follow. Getting a little bit deeper into some of those steps with brainstorming, I find it very helpful for students to talk it out. So whether you're talking it out to a person or you're recording yourself on your phone, I've never gotten into that particular use of brainstorming. I know some people that works very well for. There is something about the words you say that make this essay easier to write. Oftentimes when I'm brainstorming with a student, they are just talking and I am handwriting everything they are saying, and then I hand them the page back, and they're like, oh, okay, there's my essay, got it. So that works. Drafting, like I said, you do want to have multiple stages of that, and you don't want to be afraid to start with something brand new. We talked a little bit about finding that person, that adult, who can help you. I highly recommend that students find that one person. Just one, not multiple people. When you have additional voices coming into the essay, it can lose some of that authenticity, and different voices are then popping into it, and it also leads to confusion. Ms. Koppel says this, but Ms. Mennett says this, and my mom said that, and my neighbor down the street said that, so what do I say? If you just talk to Ms. Koppel about it, then you'd be fine, because you would know, right? So I really can't stress this one enough, and especially now, a lot of our English teachers are using that as an assignment in class, and so I noticed it this past year a lot more, where they were getting feedback from an English teacher, from a teacher, and then they were coming to me, and it was just like overload. So just keep that in mind, that multiple perspectives can lead to some confusion, so having your person. And then when you're proofreading, these are tips that you can use in other realms as well, but read your essay backwards. If you read from the bottom up, then you will just read for structure, and you will catch errors that are not caught when you read too fast to yourself. And then also read it out loud. There is a rhythm and a cadence to this essay that pops out in a way that other essays don't get, and you really notice it when you read your work out loud. And you want to notice that rhythm and that cadence with this particular essay. And that's the supplemental ones and the personal essay, although it's hard to make the Why Madison very enticing. Just as a heads up, that one's real difficult to make exciting. And then tips for all of the essays. You want to leave your reader with a positive image of who you be, right? That's super important, that whatever I'm left with, I think that this person is a good person and I want them to be in part of my community, okay? So you want to leave that reader with a positive image. That allows you to write about things that are tough, right? Where maybe you made the wrong choice as a student or as a young person, right? But as long as you're leaving the reader with that positive image, that's great. You want to have that consistent, authentic voice. Very important. It is noticeable when other people's hands get into the essay, when their words are changed, when paragraphs get manipulated, changed around. It is apparent, whether it be a thesaurus or Grammarly or another human being. It is obvious. You want to provide necessary details, and you want to make sure that whatever story you choose to tell complements the message. And that's the important thing. What are you sharing about yourself? What pieces of yourself are you sharing? Many of you have done very cool things in life, and that's a cool story, but if it doesn't share that who you be aspect, then you can save that story for a supplemental essay. Or maybe you don't get to tell it. The other thing with the necessary details is don't get bogged down. You only have 650 words, so if it's too hard to explain that your brother and your cousin and your mom and your dad and your dog were all at this place, maybe just your dad was there, right? So it's okay to omit to make the story more clear. You want to demonstrate a uniqueness or individuality, so that can be done with structure, right? I've used this example of portaging a canoe a couple of times. Many people have had that experience, but how are you writing about that to make that story more unique? Is it the message that you are sharing? Is it the story or the structure in which you are writing? This year, a student chose to timestamp her essay. So she wrote about like an hour of life, and she did maybe 5 or 6 timestamps and shared a little bit, and each of those paragraphs got a little bit longer. Very unique way to share a pretty common story, right? With something about community coming together, but that timestamping really drew me in. You don't want to provide quotes from anyone else. You only have 650 words. Anyone can look on the internet and see what, Drake said about it's the end of the night, whatever he said. You don't want to use anyone else's quotes. You want to use your own words, your own individuality. Clarity. When I'm done reading it, am I going to get the message of whatever you wrote about in 1 to 2 sentences? Can I repeat that back to you or say it back to you? Here's the other thing. A lot of students come to me and they're like, I don't have anything like that happened to me. Like I don't have really hard stuff that I've had to deal with. Great. Awesome. That's very good. That's okay. You don't have to tell a serious or a heavy or a sad story in this essay. You need to tell something that is important to you. A young woman a couple of years ago wrote a story about baking. She made cupcakes for her friends and brought them to school. The essay that she created was beautiful because it was about creating community. It was about her love of coming in and sharing a piece of herself with her friends and the community that she created at lunch. It wasn't something serious and sad and heavy, right? I have also read those. They can be great. They can be very well done, but it doesn't need to be that, okay? So it's whatever you want to tell that's important to you, that shares that piece of you that is really, really key that you want to share, okay? And I think that's the most important thing to take out of this. The story, the who you are, it has to be important to you, and that shines through in the way you write it. Sometimes students will come to me and I'll be like, yes, I've seen you in the hallway, I know who you sort of are. You're about to tell me the most personal thing that has ever happened to you. That's okay. Like that's what this essay is about, and I think that it's really important as we're transitioning from high school to senior or to college, that you're thinking about that and you're going through this, not just with the goal of getting into college, but to start thinking about who you are as a human. So that's how I approach the process when I work with students. And with that note, are there any questions? We got a minute. Students who usually start working with me and they'll start making appointments. There's always a few eager beavers who grab me right at the beginning of September, welcome back night. But you make appointments with me on the website, and we work together for about a class period, and then some kids come back many times. I do get very, very busy in October, so. And you could get information and help via a college counselor or anyone like that. I am free though.